Good evening. I'm Rachel Maddow. Welcome to the channel. Mexico is undergoing a period of heightened political tension and widespread civic mobilization. Across major cities, from the capital to regional hubs, large crowds have gathered to express frustration with long-standing issues, cartel violence, corruption, and a belief that key institutions are not adequately protecting or representing ordinary citizens. The scope and intensity of these demonstrations have drawn international attention, particularly in neighboring countries that are closely linked to Mexico through trade, migration, and security cooperation. Amid these developments, political leaders in both Mexico and the United States are offering sharply contrasting interpretations of the protests. Some view them as a grassroots response to years of insecurity, while others claim they are being orchestrated by powerful interests. This clash of narratives has only deepened the sense of uncertainty surrounding the country's future. A new wave of youth activism. A significant characteristic of the current movement is the prominent involvement of young people, especially those belonging to Generation Z. Many organizers report using digital platforms, including messaging servers and social media, to coordinate events, share safety information, and encourage participation. For many, involvement in these protests marks their first major political engagement. Younger Mexicans often cite fear for their future as a motivating factor. Having grown up with persistent violence and economic instability, they worry that meaningful opportunities will continue to shrink if no action is taken. For them, speaking out is both an act of self-preservation and a declaration of hope for a more equitable society. Government claims of outside influence. President Claudia Sheinbaum has asserted that the protests are not entirely grassroots. Her administration suggests that political opponents, possibly with foreign assistance, have invested significant resources, up to $90 million, according to her statements, to manufacture unrest and weaken her government. She has also published a list of influencers and digital organizers she believes are amplifying politically motivated disinformation. Protesters reject this characterization. Many argue that the idea of such a broad mobilization being fully staged does not align with what they have witnessed on the ground. They also highlight the absence of sizable counter-protests as evidence that public dissatisfaction is not fabricated. To them, these allegations reflect an attempt to delegitimize genuine frustration. The deepening public discontent over insecurity. Cartel-related violence remains one of the most pressing problems in Mexico. Entire regions continue to experience conflict between rival criminal groups, and many residents feel abandoned by the institutions meant to protect them. Reports of disappearances, extortion, and threats against journalists and activists contribute to an environment in which trust in authority is fragile. Protesters often refer to the fact that many areas are effectively off-limits to law-abiding citizens due to criminal control. This sense of vulnerability is central to their demands. They want a country where security is not a privilege, but a standard expectation. Contrasting views from the United States, the situation has also sparked debate within the United States. Former President Donald Trump has reiterated his willingness to consider using U.S. military force against Mexican cartels, a proposal that has stirred controversy for years. He argues that cartel networks have expanded their operations, including inside the United States, and that decisive action is needed to blunt their influence. President Sheinbaum, however, has firmly rejected foreign military intervention. Her administration maintains that Mexico's sovereignty must be respected and that any security challenges should be addressed through internal reforms and international cooperation that does not involve direct military deployment. Meanwhile, U.S. law enforcement agencies continue to report significant cases involving cartel-linked activity, including drug trafficking infrastructure uncovered in various states. These announcements contribute to ongoing debates about border security and cross-border crime. Public perception of government response. Many protesters believe the federal government is not doing enough to combat corruption or dismantle criminal networks. Critics claim that entrenched political interests and opaque institutions make accountability difficult, an issue that has persisted across multiple administrations. Some demonstrators describe feeling marginalized or ignored by officials who, in their view, focus on rhetoric rather than substantive reform. The presence of large physical barriers around government buildings, particularly in Mexico City, has become a powerful symbol of perceived disconnect between leaders and citizens. Supporters of the government counter that significant efforts have been made to reduce violence and improve social conditions, and that the scale of historical challenges requires patience. Nevertheless, public opinion remains sharply divided. Differing approaches to civic expression. Observers have noted a striking visual aspect of the protests. Many demonstrators prominently display Mexican flags, emphasizing patriotism and a desire for national renewal. Participants often describe their activism not as a partisan effort, but as an attempt to reclaim the promise of their country. At the same time, isolated incidents of vandalism or clashes with security forces have raised concerns. Many protesters condemn such actions, stressing that their movement is primarily peaceful. Nonetheless, the government has cited these disruptions as evidence of extremist elements attempting to hijack legitimate grievances. Stories behind the movement. Personal accounts from demonstrators provide insight into the diverse motivations fueling the mobilization. Some business owners say they have been harmed by corruption or arbitrary local regulations. Others have lost family members to violence or have been displaced from communities where cartels maintain control. These testimonies highlight long-standing structural issues that extend beyond partisan politics. What unites many of these voices is frustration with what they perceive as a system resistant to meaningful reform. Stories of livelihoods damaged by extortion, overreach, or bureaucratic obstacles reinforce a narrative of institutions that struggle to protect citizens or ensure fair treatment. The international dimension. For many Mexicans, the role of the United States looms large. Some see the U.S. as a potential partner capable of applying pressure to reduce cartel influence or assist with capacity building. Others worry that foreign involvement, particularly military involvement, could threaten national autonomy or create new complications. Among protesters, opinions vary widely. Some express openness to any form of assistance that would reduce violence, regardless of the source. Others are wary of inviting external actors into domestic security matters. Most agree, however, that lasting solutions require collaboration grounded in mutual respect and shared interests. A few demonstrators have referenced the possibility of support from countries beyond the United States, including Russia. Analysts caution that the involvement of geopolitical rivals could bring significant risks, potentially introducing new dependencies or straining existing alliances. The debate over border policy and its effects. Security experts often note that Mexico's internal stability is closely tied to conditions at the U.S.-Mexico border. Changes in border enforcement policies can have ripple effects on cartel finances, human smuggling operations, and regional security dynamics. Some commentators argue that tighter border controls have reduced cartel revenue streams, thereby influencing political developments in Mexico. Others dispute these claims, noting that such groups often adapt quickly by diversifying their activities. Regardless of interpretation, both countries' domestic policies continue to shape shared challenges. A population searching for representation. A recurring theme in the protests is the belief that Mexican citizens remain deeply committed to building a safer and more just nation. Many express a desire for a government that collaborates with its population rather than viewing dissent as a threat. For these individuals, the protests represent not a call for upheaval, but an appeal for renewal, an invitation to create institutions that reflect the aspirations of the people they serve. Participants often emphasize that they do not oppose their country's democratic system, rather they want it to function as intended. Their frustration is directed not at the concept of governance, but at practices they believe undermine transparency and fairness. A region watching carefully. Because Mexico is a major economic partner and neighbor of the United States, its political stability carries significant implications for the region. Many observers in North America recognize that insecurity in Mexico affects trade, migration, and shared social challenges. For this reason, political leaders, journalists, and analysts across the hemisphere are monitoring the protests closely. They recognize that the voices calling for reform reflect not only national concerns, but broader questions about governance, justice, and the future of democracy in the region. Conclusion: a turning point with uncertain outcomes. Mexico stands at a pivotal moment. The recent wave of protests, driven largely by young people demanding accountability, safety, and opportunity, reflects a broader struggle over what kind of nation Mexico will become. While some see these demonstrations as a powerful beacon of civic awakening, others view them as a destabilizing force influenced by political rivals or foreign interests. What remains clear is that the demands being voiced are deeply rooted in lived experience. Whether calling for an end to violence, increased transparency, or more responsive leadership, citizens express a shared desire for dignity and stability. The path forward will depend on how Mexico's government, civil society, and international partners navigate the competing narratives and policy challenges ahead. The coming years may determine whether this moment becomes a catalyst for reform or another chapter in a long struggle for security and justice.